Bradley Beal just got traded yesterday. Wow! Guess what? He's now a member of the Phoenix Suns. This is Sports Guy Talking that you guys are watching and listening to. I am Dustin Tran, your host, as I am here today to talk about Bradley Beal being traded to the Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant has once again formed a quote-unquote super team for the third time in his NBA career. The Suns have now officially put all their chips into the table to win a championship, if they haven't already, in the Kevin Durant era with this trade. Before I say anything else though, I want to present you guys with the topic question. So here it is. What is your reaction to the Bradley Beal trade? And honestly, this is not as big of a deal as what everybody else is putting it in. Do I think this trade makes the Phoenix Suns a better team? Sure, it certainly makes them a better team on paper. Do I think this is a horrible trade for the Washington Wizards on paper? Absolutely. However, everybody's talking about how Bradley Beal is going to make the Phoenix Suns title contenders and title favorites, but honestly, I don't see that happening. Do people not see the tough conference that is being played in the Western Conference? I mean, you look at how many good teams there are in the Western Conference, and you look at the parity around the league, and you look at how championship teams have been built in recent memory, and super teams have not been a part of it. The super team era in the NBA has already been dead for a while now, and if you guys probably didn't believe that last year, it's officially dead now. You look at the past 5 champions in terms of the amount of super teams that were there. The last super team to win a title was the Kevin Durant-led Golden State Warriors team. That was the last super team to win a title. Now, this quote-unquote super team that I've seen people float around saying, oh my goodness, how did the Phoenix Suns get Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker to all play on the same team? That's just freaking insane. And they're thinking, oh my goodness, 3 scores, that means they're going to end up winning a championship. But I don't think it actually works out like that. You know why I'm not so confident it's going to work out like that? Because the Phoenix Suns have zero depth whatsoever. Now, did they have to give up anything meaningful in the Bradley Beal trade? No, they didn't. But this trade is not going to elevate the Phoenix Suns to title contenders. You know what's going to elevate the Phoenix Suns into title contenders? Getting a solid bench, making solid moves in free agency, not having to make the crazy moves. Look, the Phoenix Suns have done a very good job making the splash moves that were needed to be made. However, what the Phoenix Suns need to do now is to make sure that they can go ahead and get some depth in free agency. They need to get some shooters. They need to get some defenders. They need to get guys that can rebound the ball. They need to get some big bodies in there as well. They might even have to trade Deandre Ayton in order to get some more depth, because let's be honest, Deandre Ayton is not a serious 4th option on a championship contending team. Is Deandre Ayton a good individual player? Definitely. But Deandre Ayton is not the kind of guy where he can play off the ball. He's a guy that needs touches in the paint all the time. You need to feed the ball to him in the post, and you need to use Deandre Ayton in the half-court game. And Kevin Durant's teams don't like to play in the half-court game. His kind of teams like to play full-court kind of games. And also, you got to remember that the Phoenix Suns don't have Monty Williams anymore as head coach. They actually downgraded from Monty Williams to Frank Vogel. I know some people might be confused and say, how can a former NBA champion be a downgrade at head coach? Well, let's be honest with Frank Vogel. Frank Vogel didn't win the title because of his great coaching. Frank Vogel won the title because he had a great roster around him. He had LeBron James. He had Anthony Davis. He had the personnel to support his coaching moves that he was making. Frank Vogel is a defensive-minded head coach, but the Phoenix Suns don't have any defense whatsoever. Frank Vogel doesn't particularly have a strong suit on the offensive end of the floor, but he's now tasked with having to deal with 3 scorers that are great on the offensive end of the floor, but 3 guys that also don't play any defense whatsoever. Kevin Durant, he's capable of being a good defender, but Kevin Durant is not going to waste his energy on the defensive end of the floor, because Kevin Durant is a scorer. He's going to be a guy that's going to be focused on getting his buckets in there. And they also got Devin Booker, a guy that's not particularly a great defender as well. He's a scorer as well. He's a mid-range master artist out there. Same thing with Kevin Durant. And as for Bradley Beal, he's a great scorer, but Bradley Beal is also not a great defender as well. Can Bradley Beal play a little bit of defense? Can he try on defense? Absolutely. But Bradley Beal is not going to be one of those kind of guys where he's going to be an elite two-way defender. The Phoenix Suns don't have two-way defenders on their roster whatsoever. The Phoenix Suns needs to have guys that can play defense. They don't necessarily need more scores. It's not like you can play with 3 basketballs at one time. When you talk about the Phoenix Suns, you have to understand that they can only play with 1 basketball, and guess what? So do 29 other teams in the NBA. The Phoenix Suns have to share the ball and they already have 3 guys on their roster right now that are very ball dominant, and if they manage to keep Deandre Ayton, that means that they're going to have 4 guys that need the ball in their hands in order to be dominant with the basketball. Because look, none of these guys can complement each other off the ball really well whatsoever. Now, can Kevin Durant do that a little bit? Sure, he can go ahead and do that, but that's not Kevin Durant's strengths. What you want in order to maximize Kevin Durant's strengths is making sure that he can go ahead and take those mid-range shots and you get the ball to him in the post, and he can run a little bit of pick and roll action as well. When you talk about the Phoenix Suns, man, this Phoenix Suns team is a better team than it was prior to the Bradley Beal trade, but this is not a title contending team. Now, granted, had they kept Chris Paul and Landry Shamet in those draft picks, I would still say that the Phoenix Suns are still a flawed roster. And even with the upgrade that they received for Bradley Beal, they're still not a title contending team. They're not a team I would take over the Denver Nuggets. They're not a team that I would take them over the Memphis Grizzlies if Ja Morant can manage to get his head right, and the fact that the Memphis Grizzlies are really well coached. This is not a team that's even better than the Los Angeles Lakers. If the Los Angeles Lakers played against the Phoenix Suns right now, in this moment, I would take the Los Angeles Lakers in that series over the Phoenix Suns because they don't have a guy that can put a body on Anthony Davis. I mean, theoretically they do, but they're not very good because Deandre Ayton doesn't show up in big moments. So if you're the Phoenix Suns, this is a good trade for them in terms of the fact that they got more stardom and they didn't have to give up very much. But they now also have to go ahead and make another trade. They got to go ahead and trade Deandre Ayton for a big man and another ball handler that can play a little bit of defense. If they can manage to get a guy like a Mason Plumlee or something like that in free agency as well, that could also help as well. They need a guy that can provide rim protection and can give solid minutes at the big position, whether that's the power forward position or whether that's the center position. Because right now the Phoenix Suns, they have a lot of positionless players. They don't have a true point guard right now because that's the one thing they lost with the subtraction of Chris Paul. But I will say that the Phoenix Suns had to make that deal because Chris Paul is effectively washed at this point in stage of his career. Chris Paul is not the player that he once was, and Bradley Beal is still an all-star caliber player. Has he missed time in the last couple of years? Yeah, he certainly has. Do I think he's getting overpaid? Absolutely. But you don't think Bradley Beal can cut it as a third option? You don't think a team with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal can be very potent on the offensive end of the floor? I mean, my concerns for Bradley Beal right now is his health. And even though he is a defensive liability, I'm actually not sweating over the fact that he's a defensive liability. If I'm the Phoenix Suns, I'm sweating over the fact that he's been prone to missing games as of late, and you need those guys healthy as much as possible so they can form up chemistry come playoff time. Because what have Kevin Durant teams struggled in the playoffs? Building chemistry. You know why they don't have good chemistry come playoff time? It's because those stars are always missing time due to injury, whether it's Kevin Durant himself or his other teammates. For whatever reason, Kevin Durant and his teammates have always missed a lot of games in the regular season, and regular season basketball is supposed to be about setting up chemistry in order to be successful come playoff time. And that's why Kevin Durant's super teams, for the most part, have underachieved in the NBA playoffs. It's because they haven't had the time, and they don't devote the time to building chemistry. Instead, they just want to look at the roster and say, you know what, go ahead and form super teams. Let me go ahead and try to stack the deck and get as many stars as possible while being lazy to actually play regular season basketball. That's why a lot of people in this generation have a problem with Kevin Durant. It's because of the fact that he just wants to stack the deck and not put in the work that's required to win a championship, a real championship, by the way, just to be clear. Kevin Durant does have 2 championships, but most people do not consider Kevin Durant's championships to be legitimate since he teamed up with possibly the greatest team of all time. But that's another story for another day. The point is, this Bradley Beal trade is a good trade for the Phoenix Suns, but it's not this great trade that's making everybody think, oh my God, the Phoenix Suns are going to be NBA champions now. But it's a trade where you can say, you know what, now they're in a better situation than they were when they had Chris Paul and Landry Shamet, because now they get to dump the bad contract that is Landry Shamet, and they get to dump a washed up point guard in Chris Paul, and now they get a guy where he can score a lot of points, and he's been proven to be a solid player over a good amount of years. I'll even go as far as to say that he's truly a star player that's been getting screwed on a bad organization like the Washington Wizards, because Bradley Beal really is that good of a player. But this trade doesn't put them over the Denver Nuggets. This trade doesn't put them over the Los Angeles Lakers. This trade doesn't put them over the Memphis Grizzlies. This trade doesn't even put them as a top 3 seeded team in the Western Conference. There are other teams out there that's going to be competing just as hard as the Suns are in terms of building up an actual team and trying to be competitive, because that's what the modern NBA is now. The modern NBA has teams that are being as competitive as possible in terms of roster construction. So the Phoenix Suns, they made a good trade, but they're not done building this up. As for the Washington Wizards, this was horrible trade for them. For them to not even get a first-round pick or any young assets in return for Bradley Beal, that is entirely bad management done by the Washington Wizards. I don't know what the Wizards general manager was thinking, because whatever he was thinking, he was very wrong for making that trade. I mean, overall though, worst case scenario for the Wizards, this is going to be a deal where it's going to be remembered as one of the worst trades in NBA history, and the best case scenario for the Wizards, it's going to be remembered as a lose-lose. I don't see how the Wizards win this deal whatsoever. They're acting like Bradley Beal had the Nicholas Batum contract or something, because of the fact that they dumped Bradley Beal for pennies on the dollar, basically. So they didn't really get anything in return. To me, the Washington Wizards are the real losers of this trade. As for the Phoenix Suns, they made a good trade, but they need to keep making good moves, because this trade is not going to put them over the top, at least alone. They need to make some more good moves, whether that's trading DeAndre Ayton, whether that's getting some more depth via free agency. They got to do whatever it takes in order to get more depth than the current roster that they have right now, because top-heavy rosters do not win in today's NBA. So that is why the Bradley Beal trade will end up elevating the Suns a little bit in the Western Conference, even though this was a good trade for them to make. Remember this though, they're not going to end up being title contenders alone with this trade. They got to make some more additions via free agency, or maybe even possibly trade DeAndre Ayton and gain some solid pieces back in return. Remember, go ahead and subscribe to Sports Guy Talking, like the video, and please comment down below. If you guys do that, I may shout you guys out in my Instagram story every Monday. That'll be for the @DustinTran Instagram account. Make sure to follow me on Instagram @DustinTran and @SportsGuyTalking. Also, go follow me on Twitter @DustinTran. Again, go ahead and do those things that I just told you guys to go do. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the content that was just produced. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed that video. Want more Sports Guy Talking, the home of great sports content? Make sure you click that subscribe button to get the latest from Sports Guy Talking. Go ahead and like the video, comment down below, check the description box on the video in order to follow my Instagram and Twitter. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from the YouTube channel Sports Guy Talking.